crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com. Today I'm here to share a Halloween card with stamps, dies, and sequins from Kat Scrappiness. There are a lot of fun new die releases at Kat Scrappiness, as well as some Halloween sequins and 2 new stamp sets. Today I'm going to be featuring a bunch of the different products because they were really kind of the jumping off point and inspiration for me. I really wanted to use that cat. I was inspired by the colors of the sequins, and I liked the idea of using the pop out die to sort of hide my shaker and create a fun surprise element. So the card would look a little bit boring at first, and then when you lift all the flaps for the pop out die, it would be an exciting shaker card. To get started, I am laying some distress ink in some traditional Halloween colors across my white cardstock panel. I am using distress oxide inks in Wilted Violet, Twisted Citron, and Spice Marmalade. I really prefer the brighter Halloween colors, and also, like I mentioned, I wanted to be inspired by some of the sequin mixes from Kat Scrappiness, so that's kind of where my color palette came from. If you want something a little bit more toned down and simple, I would suggest just using one color of distress oxide ink. I also decided to add a bit of detail by cutting the panel out with the Kat Scrappiness cross-stitched die in the rectangle, and because it was a really tight fit, it was only just a bit smaller than the die. The cardstock panel was only a bit larger than the die. I really had to tape it in place because if it shifted around, it wouldn't have cut perfectly. You could have avoided this by cutting it with the die cut shape in the first place. Then I decided to spritz on some shimmer spray just to oxidize the inks a little bit, add some interest, because like I said, it's going to look pretty plain at first on the outside until you do the pop-up. So here, there's just going to be kind of this color and pattern. And then I'm going to take the pop-out die and I will cut it from the top center of the card, and I'll be ready to start assembling my shaker. This pop-up scores the sides but cuts the center, and so it creates little triangle flaps. And I want the kitty cat from the Toil and Trouble layered stamp set to poke out. At first I thought there might be a way to arrange him on the outside of the card, but the more that I thought about it, I figured it would actually be pretty fun if he was kind of a surprise on the inside, because in the stamp set there's also a boo sentiment, and so he could kind of, be kind of scaring you on the inside. Anyway, I stamped a different sentiment from the stamp set onto the card base, and then I also am going to clear emboss over that black ink. I stamped it with the VersaFine ink, and I think that adding that clear embossing just gives it a little bit more visual interest and weight, which, since again there's not much going on, kind of adds to the card until you lift the flaps. I decided that I wanted to glue down my cat first because I did not want any of the sequins to catch on him. So if he was behind the plastic acetate sheet, then when I shook up the sequins, they could get stuck behind him. So I thought it would be easier to glue him down first. Then I will glue my acetate sheet, and I'll be ready to start assembling my shaker. You may want to make sure that you don't get any of your adhesive on your flaps because you do want them to be flapping up later. And so I'm just going to carefully trace around that hexagon shape, I believe it is. I think it's 6-sided. And put down my acetate panel. It only has to be just a bit larger than the hole or the opening itself. And then I'm ready for my foam tape. I'm using the Scotch foam tape because it is relatively thin, and when I layer it up, when I put like 2 layers of the foam tape, it's enough to get a good shake, but not as thick as some other foams that I've tried. I like enough thickness that the sequins don't get caught, but not so much that you could never mail it. And I find that if you put 2 regular stamps on these shaker cards, they do get through the mail generally, but of course your mileage may vary. And I'm going to show you here how you can lift the flaps, and that will essentially create that window that you can now see through. And all of that's adhered down, and I'm ready to sort of just finish off the card a bit. These flaps are never going to stay perfectly down again without, some adhesive or something, but I'm not really looking for them to stay down necessarily. And also it might be fun to just tape them open intentionally, but because I'm going for a surprise look, I do want to have them closed until the recipient chooses to open them and see that little surprise. But I think that I would use it again in the future and maybe choose to tape down those flaps instead and create a different sort of shaker look. I'm going to also add the boo sentiment because, like I said, it's kind of the idea of like a surprise. And I just used the same Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink to color that, and then the VersaFine ink to stamp it, put a bit of adhesive on the back, and then tucked it underneath where the flaps are. I'm adding a bit of the embossing powder bag just because it helps take some of the static cling. Your sequins won't stick to your acetate as much and they won't stick to the foam tape as much. Then I'm ready to pick out my sequins. There are a lot of adorable Halloween sequins and I don't have them all from Kat Scrappiness, but I encourage you to check them out and see which ones are your personal favorite. There are the Halloween icons that don't have any plain sequins, they're just the icon shapes. This is the ghostly greetings that I'm putting inside. It's one of my favorites because it has the purple, black, and orange, but they're not all standard sequins. They have this sort of like seed-shaped orange sequin, so it adds a bit of interest. And then, of course, there are the ghosts. So you're getting a nice combination of sequin bits. They're not like all perfectly the same. And there's also the Boo to You if you're liking the ghost that has a light green in it. I'm trying to decide what color of paper I want to go behind my sequin mix. At first I thought, well, it'll just be white. But then I didn't really like the way that looked. I didn't think the sequins popped off the white, particularly with the ghosts. And so I'm trying a few different other colors. I'm trying black, but there's black sequins, so it's not really working. There's purple, but there's purple sequins. So, then I was like thinking about it for a second. I'm like, duh, there's no green sequins in that particular mix. So even though everything coordinates, the green is the one color that I haven't pulled back in with the sequins. So I can make that green the background color. So I'm just going to take some Distress Oxide ink in a Twisted Citron, cover most of a similar sized piece of paper, but I don't have to cover it all the way because of course you're only going to see that little bit of window peeking out. I'm going to spritz it again just for a more consistent look so that it doesn't stand out too much. I'll adhere my whole shaker panel onto that other piece of cardstock. And I just wanted to add a touch of detail because, like I said, I really liked those Boo to You ghosts. They're sort of fun and playful, the way they're flying around. You can make them face either direction. So I'm going to take some multimedia matte, glue on 3 in a visual triangle around my sentiment to call some attention to it, and that is going to be it for my surprise Halloween shaker card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. You can check the links in the video description below to find the products that I used and the Kat Scrappiness blog post. Thank you so much for watching. Have a